worked with many kids and families. I've done harder things. And so I got to the point where I was like, what is going on? I started second guessing myself. I'm like, I can do, am I weak? No, I know I'm not weak. I need to be weak. How come I'm feeling this way? Why is my body, what is my body telling me? I I got so stressed out that I started feeling anxious and panicky. I literally had a panic attack in class in between groups. I turned to the assistant in my class after a group left and I said, I'm having a panic attack. She came straight to me. We hugged for 5 minutes. We both cried. The next group came in. I exited before they saw me, washed my face, cleaned my face, led the group.
A few years ago, I started writing a fictitious story based on my time as an educator. It is called Taught, and the story was partially inspired out of anger and frustration fueled by burnout. Okay, actually it was more than partially inspired by anger and frustration. But Taught has also become a vehicle for me to tell what I thought at the time, and in some ways continue to think, was and is the real story of teaching. I now realize that my perspective is not everyone's perspective, but there are some pieces of Taught that resonated with many educators. This podcast is an extension of that story, and I, a former teacher, will interview other educators asking them to share how they really feel about the current state of education. Why are so many teachers burn out? Why are so many, like me, leaving the field? We likely won't solve any problems or come up with any solutions, but we can create a community of voices that maybe begin the conversation around how educators can take back teaching. I'm Melissa LaFleur. Welcome to Taught, the podcast. Hey there, educator friends. I think that we are all finally back to school. And Taught, the podcast, is starting its second season. I'm happy to release our first episode in our second season with my friend Michelle. Michelle was a first-year teacher last year, so this episode goes out to all of you first-year teachers out there. And it is part 1. Make sure you tune in next week for part 2. Hey, everybody. So, when I started this podcast, I begged my friends far and wide to do an interview. And my guest today was someone I wanted to have on. We've been friends for almost 10 years, and I have seen her working in numerous education settings. She's creative. Man, is she creative. In fact, she is the person who said to me, "Girl, you are a writer. Get to writing." And then I started writing my book. She's a writer herself, so she knew. She's positive and loving and a wonderful advocate for families, kids, and community. She lives her life being the change. So in January, when I asked her to be part of the podcast focus group, as I was beginning to launch this whole Taught the podcast, I was actually shocked that she said yes. And here's why I was shocked. After working as a dean of students, a job she loved and was amazing at, she had finally finished her teaching degree while she was working as dean of students at another school. And when she finished her teaching degree, she took a job as a special education teacher. So she had resigned a position she loved and was a first-year special education teacher. And if you listen to my podcast, you know that I believe being a special education teacher is one of the hardest positions in education right now, if not the hardest, followed closely by being a first-year teacher in any area of education. But she was willing to take it on, and she was joyous about it. And then on top of that, she agreed to do the focus group at a time when I knew she had zero time to spare. So I got to see her in January. We hadn't seen each other for a bit since she had taken this job. And we got together for the podcast focus group, which was a group of people that just kind of helped me brainstorm how we should proceed with the podcast. And when I saw her, I knew she was not okay. I knew something was terribly wrong. Today, my friend Michelle is going to share with us her educator journey and how burnout came quickly and nearly consumed her. Michelle, I know you have been hesitant about doing this, but I want to thank you on behalf of every first year teacher out there for sharing your story. Welcome.
Thank you, Missy. Boy, almost brought tears to my eyes when I think of my love and joy for children and families. Thank you for having me on. It's an honor to be here. I know it took a long time for me to get here, but I'm here. I'm here for you.
Michelle in the house.
I'm here for everybody else. Michelle's in the house.
So why don't you start out by telling us about the path that brought you to even wanting to become a teacher and then becoming a teacher?
Wow. Well, if you know me, you know the story that I wanted to be a teacher since I was 12. I had a friend who had about 7 brothers and sisters. We were in middle school, and her mom was hardly home, and so we took care of her siblings. And from then on, I just knew that I felt called to work with children and families. And so I got into working at the Boys and Girls Club for a little bit when I was also in middle school, and then in high school. And when I was in middle school going to the Boys and Girls Club, we didn't have a lot. So I'd go there and I'd have snacks afterwards, peanut butter jelly sandwiches and milk. Then when I got into high school, I worked at the Boys and Girls Club, and I wanted to pay it forward. And I kept growing, and I thought, I want to continue working with children. So I started working at preschools, really great professional development opportunities at these learning centers. And after that, I had kids. And when my first one went to school, I said, I'm going to school too. I want to make sure that my child has the opportunities in school that I didn't have, i.e., someone who is there to advocate for them inside and outside. As my mom, when she raised us, she was really busy working, so she advocated for us outside of the school. She wasn't able to be in the school, so that's the way she engaged, and she engaged quickly whenever I needed her to. Then I saw, as I had my kids, that family engagement had changed. There was more involvement. I worked at a school where the 6th grade parents were really involved. The kindergarten parents were really involved. All the parents between kindergarten and 6th grade were really involved. A really great parent involvement. And that was one of the reasons why I chose that school. We moved across the street so that our children could go to that school. So when my first child went, I said, I want to make sure that our children have the engagement that the schools didn't provide for my brother and I, and for my mother when we were growing up. And so I made that promise. So then my third child went to school, and I thought, I'm a little sad. I'm coming too. So with every one of my children, I volunteered. And I volunteered so much in school that the principal said, Michelle, you should just get a job here. So I started volunteering, and I started as a recess teacher, and then I became a special education educator in 1st through 3rd grade classroom. And that's what made me fall in love with education, working with students with exceptionalities. It was so rewarding and so fulfilling. I felt like I was living my purpose. I was able to, on Fridays, I led all the art groups. In the spring, I was able to always lead the poetry curriculum. And so we're able to introduce these students to not only poetry, rhyme, and rhythm, but also introduce them to the stage, because I noticed oftentimes in special education that our students weren't on the stage because, sometimes they have exceptionalities where they need to move, they need to say things, they need to blurt. And so oftentimes they weren't included in these presentation programs. And so we just developed one. So we had poetry presentations and brought the families in. And I just my eyes just like, and my heart just beams looking at these students on stage, proud of who they were. And working with these students with exceptionalities, you can hear my voice cracking. It just moved me so much. And then I said, this is what I want to do. So I pursued my degree. I started working on my college probably about within 20 years. I've been working on my degree for 20 years. So then after that, I I became a family engagement liaison. So I was able to work for 2 schools, developing programs for disenfranchised families. As my education grew, my professional knowledge grew, I started to grow. I like change. I like to branch out. I like to be creative. So then, um, after that, I felt like this is beautiful. I get to create programs for families to bring them in, to help them understand that this is their school too, that knowing what your child is learning, where they are in their learning, and how to support them at home is so important. And that is one of the keys to learning. That's a key to learning along with parents, partnering with community. And so I was able to create programs like immigration forums and young ladies and young gentlemen's book clubs, mentoring book clubs, and math nights. And I was also able to volunteer and create or carry on the Winterfest program at school, where it's our holiday program where we bring families and communities in. So I was writing songs, and we had a Winterfest choir, because if the kids are on stage, the families will come. Right. And so we had singing, and we had arts, and we had food, and we had music, and we had togetherness, and it was so creative, and it was so fun. And after that, I became a dean at a middle school. And I did not know that when I became the dean, that would be like my first and favorite age, because there's some crazy, beautiful students. I call them my beautiful chaos. I grew. They pushed me to learn more about myself as an educator and as a human. I learned to listen. I learned that the teens are telling the truth, and listen to them. They're valuable. I learned how to guide behavior without disciplining. I learned how to guide behavior and uplift them and help bring out their strengths. Ooh.
That has always been my favorite age. And I always wondered if it was because that's where I started. I started in middle school, but I do think that there is a special beauty to, those are I'm not going to call them ugly ducklings, but let's just say those are our special ducklings that are becoming swans. And we're there for that transition when you're in middle school. And, that transition is not always pretty, but sometimes it is quite beautiful, and they need a lot of support.
They do. And I just want to let everybody know, that you will see, like, I'm very passionate. And so you'll see my passion come out sometimes as tears. And that's okay.
It
Because
is
all
okay.
these tears are all this love that I have for these students. And yeah, I call them my beautiful chaos. They're beautiful. I see them as a person. I believe when you work with students, especially students that might have a lot of conflicts, and they're dealing with a lot of conflicts, we have to see students as a person, because when we see them first as a problem, we become a problem. And then we become a barrier to helping them learn and grow, and access education, not only academically, but also socially and emotionally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there you were, Dean of Students.
Yes.
When did you become a teacher? How did you get from dean to, because to be honest, I thought this is it, man. She has found her spot. She's not going to
Oh,
leave.
yes. Oh, honey, I was walking my purpose. Yes, I was like the first year they had me wrapped around their fingers. I got it by the second year, third, fourth, fifth, sixth. So by my last year, I was ready to move on and to move forward with this degree that I had worked on for 20 years. It was really hard to let go of the students. I work really hard on building relationships with students and staff, and families. And so I had finished my degree. I have a dual degree in general education, K-8, and I have a degree also in special education, K-12. And so I knew that it was time for me to move on, to move into the classroom, to be able to engage children and families in the learning, to create, to see the sparkle in their eyes when I read books to them, or when something clicks in math or in reading, to be able to bring families in to learn along with us, to be able to sing through the day with children, to know that all these years since I was 12, it's come to fruition.
Yeah.
Of wanting to be in the classroom, to embrace, encourage, and inspire. And so it came to my graduation day. I graduated, walked across the stage, super happy. And I applied for a job, got a continuing contract, very thankful for that, in a resource room. And didn't really exactly know what a resource room was. Had my onboarding as a new teacher for a week before school started
And
in
that
August.
was this past school year, correct?
This school year. So in September, I had my onboarding and everything, super excited, and you got all your information and stuff. And then, you start your first week in a resource room, or, a couple of weeks being able to, you have to make your schedules. So I learned that, I have 25 kids on a caseload. When I got there, you have to create a schedule for your 25 kids on a caseload, and each kid has different service needs. Some might have a service need for reading. Some might have, service needs for reading, writing, math, and social, emotional, and behavior regulation. So they might have between 1 and, 9 service needs that it's important to serve. And you multiply that times, 25 students, and then 6 different teachers that it's important to balance the schedule with, and when can I service these children? And I needed to make small groups according to their, learning levels, and also make sure that I was not taking them out of their general education class too much, because there's a certain number of minutes that I have to serve. So balancing this all out was really hard. It was stressful in the beginning. I didn't know how to create schedules for 25 students. As a mother, just reversing, or a parent, the primary parents in the home, yeah, we're used to making the schedule for our students or for our kids, and sports, and, you got breakfast, lunch, dinner, and you got to pick them up from school, you got to take them to sports, this and that. But when you multiply that to 25 little beautiful human beings with different exceptional needs, and then 6 different teachers, and everything else that goes into play, and then also IEP meetings, right? Building that connection with the students, the families, the teachers, and then making sure that all the teachers or the special education team is included in your process of working with these students, and also making sure that they can all meet them, have the meeting. That's pretty much what that was. Serving these students, working with a small group, and then, having to pause that small group because a student who's not supposed to be there at that time needs you, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're emotionally dysregulated. So you stop your small group, you help regulate the student. And this was a process that went on and on and on and on, right? Regular, repeated. And it created a lot of stress. It was really stressful, but, I rolled with punches as long as I could.
So let me ask you something. When you became a special education teacher, in your mind, what did that job look like?
In my mind, it looked like the previous job that I had as an assistant. So remember, I've been assistant, right? An assistant, assistant. And I watch my lead teachers. I watch many lead teachers. That's what I do. I watch and I learn. So I knew that, I'm going to have to do IEPs. She would kind of
Sure.
about IEPs, no problem, right? But what it looked like to me is I would have my classroom, right? And I would work with the students in my classroom. I would have an assistant with me the whole time, helping with other groups, and I would model to my assistant. I like to call her the teacher in my classroom, because she wasn't my para; she was another educator in the classroom. So working and partnering with her, having meetings with her in the morning, meeting with the teachers once a week, the general education teachers, making sure that it looked like meeting with families, maybe once a month at least through their IEP meetings or calling. It looked like being able to create a community that was conducive to learning, for me to learn, for the students to learn, for kids to come in, and I could have focused attention on this small math group or this small reading group or this small written language group, that I could teach in the class and use outdoor learning as well, that I could help facilitate learning in a para-educator who was also, this was her first time in a resource room as well. And she, had also switched the type of position that she was working in. So it looked like the classroom that I thought it would be like the classroom that I used to work in. It was a self-contained classroom previously. I didn't know much about a resource room, but boy, did I find out. I have a lot of moving pieces. And
Well,
yeah.
as you're saying this, so what I am hearing from you, and you can tell me if I have this right, what you envisioned was you and collaborating with others and families and working with students, if I could summarize.
Yeah,
It
and
was the
having
idea
fun.
was you working with the knowledge base that you have to
Mhm.
help students learn to the best
Mhm.
capacity they have while again collaborating with others and the families. But
Yeah, and having my partner in class and really creating magic in the classroom.
what you described was scheduling and paperwork. And
And
sounded like
regulating students and
I was going to
stopping
say and
conflicts to regulate
reacting.
students and support them.
And it sounds like some pretty reactive situations, right? It's a student shows up and now I have to react. I have to figure out what to do with students I have here and what to do with this student who is here because they need some intervention of some sort.
That
So,
and also, pardon for interruption, but also regulating students in the group that I have, because remember, they were 4th through 6th graders. And
yeah.
so they're going through their own emotions. Drama starts in 4th grade. And so, and particularly with the girls. So, there was a lot of putting out fires. There was a lot of tears coming after recess. The students would come and half of them would be in tears because of what happened on the playground. So then it's 5 minutes of regulating those students, getting them ready for learning,
Mhm.
and reminding them to handle their conflicts on the playground with the recess teacher or with the teacher that was there. And so I spent a lot of time being a dean in the classroom,
Right.
and in doing that, and I do it well. I guide behavior well. I found myself guiding behavior almost all of the time, and paperwork, and trying to balance guiding the behavior, teaching, and collaborating, and just and if a student had other needs, because we had students that needed a one-on-one, or were trying to get a one-on-one for, because they just needed more help regulating themselves, or more help with their behavior. And so it came to that, finding trying to get a one-on-one for a student. That's another 4 IEP meetings, right? In addition to the
Right.
one that you're already going to have for that student, and which increases the amount of meetings, which shortens the time that I have to serve the students, right?
Right.
Shortens the amount of mental space that I have when I'm thinking, okay, I have to, in my head, I've got 25 different students, all these different needs, 6 different classes, all these IEP meetings. I got to make sure that I am serving these minutes, that I'm getting them when I need them, right? And so all this is coming to play, and trying to manage it all is a lot.
Yeah. Okay. So that brings me to that January meeting.
Mm.
I messaged you and 20 other people, I think, and said, hey, I'm thinking about doing this podcast. I'd like to put a focus group together, get some input. And I think you were the first person that responded and said, yeah, I'll do it. And I'll never forget when I saw you pop into that Zoom meeting. I mean, it's Zoom, right?
Mm.
And I could just tell things were not okay. So I feel like you were maybe at the burnout point,
Mhm.
but tell us a little bit about where you were then. And then I would like to hear your burnout story.
Yeah, interesting. I just want to say first, you look like the sun is shining behind you, and you
It
are an
is.
angel. You've got sun rays coming out. So, um, I wanted to preface with like I've done all I felt like I've done all the things. I can run around, I can run circles, in the community, doing this, doing that, 24 hours a day, helping people all the time. And that was me. And so I was like, I know I could do this job. The teacher that was there before me, I met her one day and she's like, "Okay, gotta do this, 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 and this." And I saw all the stacks of folders she had and all this stuff and all her learning materials. She was there for like 10 years. So I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm stepping into yet another position of someone who's been here 10 years, has a down pat. She knows what she's doing. I'm like, she can do it. I can do it. I've done really hard things. I can do this, right? So come January. And I'm like, right? Empty tank.
Yeah.
And that empty tank came not only from all these moving pieces, but in particularly because I felt in my heart of hearts that I couldn't give the children what they needed.
Yeah.
I couldn't give them what they needed because it was always interrupted.
I was going to say the system that you were in was not set up for you or the kids to be successful.
Yeah, it was always interrupted. And so my greatest desire and my most thankful thing in education and the thing that I feel most blessed with is that I'm able to facilitate learning in the life of a child, learning about who they are, learning about how to solve this math equation, learning about how to make connections in reading, how to decode, right? Whew, there's that passion again. You can hear my voice. And so when I have a child, I'm trying to help them learn how to read. And they have 2 hours with me for reading, right? Some of these students, 3 hours. At 3 hours, I had to cut out 3 hours from their general education time because they need an hour of written math, an hour of reading, an hour of written language, math, reading, written language, an hour. And I had this one child in particular, sixth grader, gonna go up to second grade, still working on CVC words. How do we get to this point? So now I have this lovely human where I'm like, he's going to go to middle school. I was a dean. I know what it's like. His saving grace right now is that he's going to the school that I used to work at. So I know those learning support teachers are amazing.
Yeah.
He's going to do well. And so it just broke my heart that I felt like I couldn't have the time because I'm trying to teach him, right, how to read, how to help facilitate that learning in him. And then it's interrupted. And then I'm like, how can I do what I know I'm called to do if I can't do it? It just seems like the process, not the process, but the system became a barrier to what was really needed. It was time and attention, dedicated learning, dedicated focus time to help like model the curriculum to my para or to excuse me to the assistant in my class. I did not even have time to do that. She was frustrated. She was
Yeah.
pulled out of my room to do so much stuff for other classrooms. I was told, you have a dedicated para. I had her for maybe 2, 3 hours out of a 6.5 hour day, right? She had to do recess in the morning or crossing guard in the morning, crossing guard in the afternoon, recess, lunch. I'm the para in this class, in the special education class. What do you need? I'm here the whole time, right? The
Right.
whole time. And so we both felt frustrated that we couldn't serve our students. I had like 13 groups. I'd make sure that I think she had like maybe 5, right? So we're balancing these because she has other obligations. So it was so stressful, so stressful that I felt like my body and my brain just couldn't do it anymore. I felt physically tired.
So
I
kind
felt
of break that
emotionally
down
tired.
for me. And there's a reason that I'm asking you to do this. I don't want to put you back in that headspace because
Yeah,
I was there and you know that I was. But,
I know.
I think it's important, especially for our first year teachers, to know that the body tells us.
Hmm.
The body tells us when it's too much. Um, Amy Shamberg, she just did her first episode. I just released it at the time that we're recording this.
Hmm.
And we're going to go through a whole series of, and that's part of it. The part of it is the acute stressor happens the first or second time that your whole day gets disrupted in whatever ways it got disrupted. But after that goes on day after, so that's acute stress. And then
Yeah.
after that goes on day after day after day, now you're in chronic stress. And chronic stress is what leads to burnout. And oftentimes, what you're going to talk about is what happens. We don't even know because we're so used to pushing through. We're so used to, I've
Girl,
got this. I've done
I
this
got it.
before.
I
Yeah.
can do this. I can do this. It's easy. I've
Mm-hmm.
done it. I have 3 kids. I
Yes,
raised them well,
you
right?
did.
I raised them well, right? I've worked with many kids and families. I've done harder things. And so I got to the point where I was like, what is going on? I started second guessing myself. I'm like, I can do, am I weak? No, I know I'm not weak. I need to be weak. How come I'm feeling this way? Why is my body, what is my body telling me? You know, I, I got so stressed out that I started feeling anxious and panicky. I literally had a panic attack in class in between groups. I turned to the assistant in my class after a group left and I said, I'm having a panic attack. She came straight to me. We hugged for 5 minutes. We both cried. The next group came in. I exited before they saw me, washed my face, cleaned my face, led the group, right? And then it happened again outside of school, right? And then I took a week off for myself. I was like, this isn't right. Something's not right. I need a break. Right. I had a break, got a bunch of subs, made sub plans every day for a week. I went back after a week. And then, I was like, okay, I'm okay. Everyone's like, you're okay. I'm like, okay, we got this. I got this. I got this. Michelle, you can do this. Right. So then on my way to work, probably about a week or two later, I'm going to pick up a colleague. Before I get to her house, I start having a panic attack on the freeway. I can feel it. I can feel it coming from my toes. It's coming. It's coming. I'm like, you're driving. It's okay. Breathe. So I do my breath work. I get to her. Before she gets in the car, I look at her. I'm warning her. I'm like, I'm warning you. I'm just having a panic attack. I just want you to know. Before we get to school, I couldn't go in the door. I couldn't go in the door. I'm crying. She's got her hand on my knee. She understands, she's been through, she understands what anxiety feels like. So she's regulating me. I'm having to regulate my own self, right? I'm in the red zone, right? How do I get back to the green zone? And so when I did that podcast with you, or when I did the focus group with you, that's when I realized I hadn't actually at that time, I'm not sure if I'd realized I was feeling burnt out. I think I was realizing, oh, I'm just stressed. It's just a lot of stress, just a lot of stress, right? I've been in education since, so I'm 51 now, right? So I've been in education since I was 19, early learning since I was 19. Long time. I am not a newbie, right? I know this. And so I was like, no, I'm not burned out, I'm stressed. But then as I continued with this focus group and listening to all the ladies and listening to your podcast, I'm like, oh, damn, I am burned out. I have nothing left in the tank. I went to the doctor. My blood pressure was stroke. My doctor looked at me and she said, I don't even know how you're standing. It was over 200, right? So I immediately, obviously, got on increased my medications, right? And I just went on ahead and I took a leave of absence. I left my job after 7 months. I said, I have to get to a point where I have to take care of myself or I'm going to die. I almost died. I could have stroked out.
Yeah.
My passion for teaching got burned out with my body. I was ready to leave. Like, I'm not doing this anymore. My health is more important. So it came to a point where I was at an impasse. This love, this desire, this calling that I have, right, had to be marginalized because my health was at risk. And not only did I have high blood pressure, right, found out I had a tumor, right? Thank God it's benign, so I had to go through all this, my district provides free therapy. So I went to therapy. I'm like, I'm going to access this. I'm going to take care of myself. It was really hard leaving. So I had the stress of leaving my babies.
Yeah.
Right? Leaving the assistant, trusting that God was going to take care of my classroom. But I had to take care of myself first.
Well, Michelle, I say this all the time. Without educators, we don't have an education system. And the same goes for your classroom.
Yes,
You don't have a class without a teacher.
you
And so
don't.
you're right. You do have to take care of yourself.
You do. So I got to 7 months, right? 7 months, 7 months. And so all this conflict is going on in me, right? And so I got to the point where I wanted to leave. And so doing this focus group with you, I'm like, okay, so I went through this whole process. I stepped way back, right? Took my leave of absence. I talked with a lot of colleagues. What do I do? How do I do this? A lot of colleagues helped, and I wanted to go back to in the school. Like I had colleagues that were trying to help me. I had support. I did. I had support, but they couldn't do my job. They had their jobs to do. They
Right.
had their classrooms to lead, right? So they did what they could, but they can't change the system. The system is set, right? So there's things we need to change in the system. So then I got to this point where I'm on my leave of absence, right? Took leave of absence in March, and I'm just going to the doctor, my medical doctor. I'm going to the therapist. I'm going to the dentist. I'm just taking care of myself because I hadn't in a long time. I'm like, oh my gosh. So I'm like trying to complete all this stuff so that I could get healthy. I started getting outside when camping, right? Went to I go outside, I go running a lot, not running yet, but walking a lot. And I used to go running. And then I stopped. Like when I worked, I was also in the master's program. I forgot to tell you. I started my master's program
Yeah.
in July. Before I started working in September, I was super excited. I'm gonna get my master's in curriculum and instruction. And I'm starting in July, it's good. And then I start school in September, boom, no time. I had to exit my master's program. And so that was another thing that was heavy on me. And so listening to the podcast and going through all these things and taking care of myself and going through weeks of therapy and spending time with my family and having the support, thank God, the support of my family and my partner, who is like, I would rather that you live, right?
Yeah.
Because I'm like regretting leaving. Everybody else has to do my work. Now the psychologist has to do all the IP meetings, right? Because the leave replacement, she just got in there, right? And so now I'm creating heavier work for more people or more work for other people. And so that also was on me. But now it's like, I got to the point where I was like, I love you guys, but I love me more. I love me more. I
Yeah.
have to take care of myself. And so that's where I got. And that's where I am right now. And that's why I can smile. And even though you see some tears or you hear some shaky voice, I can smile now knowing that I did the right thing. That I realize that I don't have to give up education. I don't have to give up teaching. I just have to give up the way or the choice I make as far as what type of classroom I want to teach in. And it was okay to me to feel that it was okay to change. It was okay to change my mind. It was okay to leave a
Yeah.
position I felt wasn't healthy for me. And all of that and releasing all that stress, I feel so much better now. I feel like I'm back to myself. Like I can see I have a clear path. A clear path. I want to teach in a classroom. I want to Try the younger grades, because family engagement is so important. Get those students while they're younger, get the families while they're younger, right? To help create and facilitate learning that's linked to learning, developmental, collaborative, right? And interactive and developmental. And that's what I want to do. And my path is clear. And so that's where I am right now.
Well, I'm really glad that you said this, because a lot of times on the podcast, I've been pretty honest about my own journey, which was I'm out, I'm done.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
that isn't the only pathway. It really isn't. And sometimes it is a lot of what you're saying. It's evaluating what isn't working for you. And you've done an excellent job of that, of sitting back and saying, okay, these are the things I love. These are the things I don't love. And so maybe there are other positions that are going to be more appropriate for the things that I love, and taking out the ones that I don't. And I think a lot of people like me are, they just push through for too long. and those of us in my camp are like, okay, we're just done. If we have the luxury of being done. Not everybody has that luxury.
Yeah.
And sometimes I don't know how much longer this luxury is going to last for me. I may be getting a job with you, if, because I'm not independently wealthy. Actually, the podcast costs me money. So it's a full-time job, but I pay for it. It's a full-time job I pay for. But I think that you're doing some really important work. And setting an example that I want my listeners to hear, which is you're a first-year teacher. And I think a lot of times that in and of itself can be intimidating for first-year teachers to stop and say, okay, this doesn't feel right.
Mm-hmm.
And I need to look at my options, because a lot of times first-year teachers are told, oh, next year will be better. And the year after that'll be better. It just takes time. You just got to do this. You just. But sometimes if your body is telling you stop, you have to stop, and you have to say exactly what you have to go through the process that you went through, and you modeled it beautifully. You did it all. You went to your doctor. Your doctor said, yes, stop. Your therapist said, yes, stop. The people who worked with you said, yes, stop. We love you. We care about you. And you said, I love me and I care about me. Your family said, we love you and we care about you. And that gave you what you needed to be able to say, I can do this, but I need some things to be different. I wish I knew. Today's episode was produced and edited by me. The theme music is by Otis McDonald featuring Joni Inez. If you know someone who might enjoy these conversations, please share the podcast episodes as much and as often as you can. It's as simple as copying the link you use to access today's episode and sending it in a message or sharing it on social media. I'm a small, independent operation, and your shares broaden our audience. Perhaps you or someone you know will be inspired to talk about teacher burnout. If you would like to get your voice on my podcast, contact me via the link on my webpage, taught.buzzsprout.com. Coach, speaker, and author Rashid Ogunlaro said, "It may take many voices for people to hear the same message." Join me in being one of the many voices rising up to get the message out around educator burnout. This is Melissa LaFour. Thank you for listening to Taught, the podcast. I wish I knew. I have an important reminder/disclaimer to share. The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed by the hosts and guests on this podcast are their own and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of any other agency, organization, employer, or company. Content provided on this podcast is for informational and entertainment purposes only and should not be taken as professional advice. We encourage you to do your own research and consult with qualified professionals before making any decisions based on the information discussed in this or any other episode. Additionally, any opinions or statements made during the podcast are not intended to malign any religion, ethnic group, club, organization, company, or individual. Listener discretion is advised. Thank you for tuning in.